Okay, we're up. Hello, everybody, and out there in Open Studio Piano Land. How's everybody doing? I see a lot of questions already here. Holy cow, we got 122 people tuning in. Nice to see you all. We got Faku or Fasu. My apologies. Plaza. How do you organize your practice sessions? What items do you recommend to practice? I'm going to just try to go through the questions one by one and get to as many as I possibly can here. What items do you recommend to practice on a regular basis? Okay, that's a very good question. I think it depends on how much time you have to practice. Let's say you have an hour a day. I mean, when I was a student, like in Berkeley College, I probably practiced, 6 to 7 to 8 hours a day. But that's what you're there for, But once you're not in that kind of environment, a highly specialized environment like that, you've got life and cooking and laundry and maybe kids and job and work and stuff to worry about. So let's say just conservatively you have an hour to practice. So there's a couple ways to think about it. You could do the same thing every day where you have, let's say you break it down to like 15 minutes of I mean, no matter how much time you have, I think it's always good just to warm up, right? To start with some warm ups, scales, arpeggios. I mean, really just basic, 4 octaves. And even, when you're playing scales, arpeggios, things like that, don't turn off your brain. Like really focus on that. Try to get a good sound out of the piano, a nice big full sound, whether you have an acoustic piano or a keyboard like this, which I'm using today. I always try to produce a good tone out of the instrument, and turn your brain on even when you're just practicing kind of like quote unquote boring or remedial stuff. And then maybe you're working on a transcription, something I really highly recommend and insist on, and really the only real true way to learn how to play this music, jazz music, is by transcribing. You can have a million books and sheets of transcriptions and exercises, but if you don't do the work yourself, it's not going to go into your brain. You're not going to really internalize it in the same way. So maybe you spend 15 minutes working on a transcription, just listening and playing it back or writing it down, however you remember things the best. And then, maybe learning a tune. So maybe you spend 15 minutes learning a tune or half an hour learning a new tune. And whether it's something from the Great American Songbook or, something more contemporary, whatever it is you're working on. So maybe you could break it down that way. For me, my practice nowadays more revolves around what I have to learn for a particular gig or recording or something like that. So, let's say I'm going to go, well, no one's on the road right now, but in a normal environment, let's say, Diane Reeves calls me up to sub for Peter Martin on a gig. I'm going to practice, for a week leading up to that gig. I'm going to shed on Diane's music specifically and try to memorize as much of it as I can, get caught up with whatever the new arrangements are since the last time I, played the gig. Or if I have to learn like a notated piece for something, or like a classical-ish piece, that'll be what I'm practicing. So it really depends on what I need to do. And so you can maybe just narrow it down to what is it that you really need to work on right now. And someone early on told me, always start with the hardest thing. I mean, after you do your warm-ups, go right to that thing that really is giving you trouble. So don't just keep practicing the same stuff over and over. If you've played Autumn Leaves a million zillion times and you need to work on giant steps or something, go right to giant steps and just get to it. Let's see, Bartosz Golinsky. Hi, what's your mental process when you practice scales, chords, and all keys? Do you always think about scale degree in relation to the root, or do you rely on the visual aspect of the keyboard? I don't know. I mean, like I mentioned, I mean, the first thing is just to have your brain engaged. So you're always focused, always engaged, whether you're practicing scales or something more difficult. Chords in all keys, scale degree in relation to the root. I don't really think about that much. I don't think about theory. I think of everything in root position for me. I don't. To me, practicing a D minor scale is not the same thing as practicing a C major scale, or let's say a D Dorian scale, or a G Mixolydian scale, or an F Lydian scale. Those are all separate scales to me. That's just how I think of it. If I'm in the key of F, if I'm playing an F scale, I'm in the key of F, period. I'm not thinking of how they relate necessarily to all the other modes and things like that. But that's just me. Dan Norris, I'd love to know how you start creating a left-hand groove for any simple piece. Well, so for me, my left-hand grooves are I'm usually trying to emulate a bassist, whether it's like a straight ahead jazz bassist like Ray Brown, or a fusion type bassist like Jaco, or a funk bassist like Bootsy Collins, or a reggae bassist like Aston Family Man Barrett. Whoever I'm trying to emulate and play as authentic of a bass line as I can. So and so I'm not the greatest left-hand bass player in the world, but I do try to get as close to the feel and the sound of those cats as I can. So you can transcribe. I recommend to pianists, transcribe bass players too. Transcribe bass lines, in all different styles, and really learn how those things work. And then you can apply. You can do it in your left hand. Let's see here. Ian Saylor, what is your least favorite standard? I don't know. That changes. I try not to focus too much on tunes I don't like. Albert Lamb, do you practice performing? In addition to all the things you set aside to practice, do you devote time to mentally preparing yourself for performing? That's a funny. My answer is going to be kind of weird, but I don't necessarily practice performing. In terms of like, I'm here at home, I don't visualize that I'm on stage or something like that, but I might do that in reverse. So one of the ways that I deal with stage fright, and I still get it, I still get like a nervous stomach, even after 35 years of doing this, professionally, I still get nervous before a gig. Is sometimes I try to psych myself out, and I just tell myself I'm just practicing. So it's like, sure, I'm going on stage in front of 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, whatever it is. Sometimes I just like, well, I'm just going to go shed, and just whatever happens, happens, and not try to think about all those people out there. And, and then another thing I do sometimes is because I noticed, I realized at some point that that after about 2 or 3 tunes, I feel pretty relaxed, no matter what's going on with me nerves wise. After, a few tunes, I feel pretty relaxed and feel pretty comfortable. And then by the end of the gig, it's like all this tension has been let out, and I feel really super relaxed. So sometimes I like to tell myself that the gig I'm about to play is like the after party, like I've already played the gig, and I try to like convince myself I've already played the concert, and then anything I play after this is just for fun, but those are the mental games I go through. Another question by Albert Lamb, which is I'm going to answer because it's a completely different question, a really good one. Which jazz pianist would you say have had the greatest influence on your playing? I'll just name them: Phineas Newborn Jr., Thelonious Monk, Bud Powell, Ahmad Jamal, McCoy Tyner, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Hank Jones, Buddy Montgomery, Harold Mayburn. Quite a few, and those are early on, and now I'm still being influenced by pianists, and a lot of them are the younger guys, oh God, I hate this question because I can never think of anybody's name, and I'm just like brain dead. But there's so many cats out here that are just just doing such great stuff. That's a very diplomatic answer, but man, you know, it's great just seeing what the younger players are doing and being like just absolutely blown away. And also going back and listening to a lot of legacy players that I just am now catching up with, like Nina Simone, for example, as a pianist. Holy moly! I mean, everyone knows how great she is as a singer and you know, a band leader. But man, her piano playing, like on her first record, that Little Girl Blue record, is absolutely stunning. Mary Lou Williams, you know, her early stuff, her stride stuff is just like Nightlife, just crazy good. And you know, and so I still try to, I don't have a ton of time to transcribe and do all, but I still try to like check out, you know, everything that's happening and keep up. And I realized at some point I'm not gonna beat anybody. I'm not gonna be any better than the young cats, you know, but just be inspired by and enjoy what they're doing. Austin, hey Geoffrey, thank you for doing this. What are some of your favorite substitutions to use throughout rhythm changes? Okay, Austin, I have a in my first keys to jazz piano course, I have a rhythm changes workout, which gives all kinds of substitutions, and there's some PDFs that go along with it. So if you have keys to jazz piano, check it out, and if you don't, get it. Let's see. Nahuel Bailo. Sorry, I apologize to anyone whose name I'm mispronouncing. Hello, do you recommend to use a metronome to practice everything? Yes. How to use it for up tempos? Well, you could put it on 2 and 4, you know, like so this is set at 112, but if this is 2 and 4, that would make it quarter note equals 224, I guess. Or you could just put it on 1 and 3. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like one time I asked Dizzy Gillespie how he thinks about playing fast tempos, like the really fast tempos where it's like quarter notes like this. And he said he just thinks of beat 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. He just like I just think about beat 1. So I don't know. Maybe that's helpful. Let's see. I'm just going to jump around a little bit. I apologize if I'm skipping everybody or anyone. What are some of your personal favorite target notes? I don't know if I think about target notes, but I do think about upper extensions as being pretty notes. You know, the ninths. Here's like a C minor. You know, so one thing, you know, if you think about these upper extensions, they if you land on them, like you look at like a tune like Upper Manhattan Medical Group by Billy Strayhorn, many of those melody notes are those upper extensions, and there's those kind of pretty notes. So so the very first note of the melody on F minor 7 flat 5 is the 11, flat 9, again the 11, 13, flat 13, flat 13, flat 13, 9, flat 9, right? So that whole melody is based off of those, using those upper extensions as like, you know, landing points or target notes, as you say. You know, Rhythm Earth ET asking about tips and exercises to help with making phrases and end well and hip. And I would add to that, make them start hip too. You know, start. So you can think about starting phrases on different beats. You know, like starting on beat 2. You know, starting on beat 2.5, 3, 4. And also ending on different phrases, and you could actually just, you know, maybe write out 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, sorry, and a 1, 2, and a 2, 3, and a 3, and 4, 4, and a 4, and then, you know, places to end, the same thing, and give yourself I mean, this is the way I would practice, like really methodically. Like I make a lot of sheets and charts and things like that. And you know, let's say your first phrase you start on beat 1 and you end it on beat 1. Your next phrase you started on the and a 1 and you ended on the and a 1. And I don't know what the actual math is on that. How many different versions of that you would have? Because it's some kind of factor of something. But I was never good at math. But you know, you'd have a lot of different combinations you could do. But I mean, listen also to, I recommend listening to Thad Jones a lot. Thad Jones and Mel Lewis Orchestra, because the way Thad wrote his phrases, he always started and ended on hip places. Like there's a tune called Fingers, which is rhythm changes, and I'm going to play what I can remember of it, but it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so a lot of across the bar line, like really hip kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe Thad can give you some inspiration that way. Chris Jerome, greetings from London. With no rhythm sections to play with for the time being, what tips do you have to really get into the groove when playing solo? Yeah, so I say in all seriousness, we're all going to be much better solo piano players when this thing is over. You know, we're just stuck at home playing ourselves. So, you know, practice with a metronome, practice along with recordings, try to, you know, come up with bass grooves that are authentic, you know, you know, and I mean, just play along with records, play along with records that have a clearly defined groove, whether it's swing, you know, like an Art Blakey, the Jazz Messengers, or, you know, Count Basie, or the Jimmy Smith, or something like that, something where the groove is just undeniable, you know, 4/4. Or if you're practicing funk, you know, practice along with James Brown records, or for, you know, reggae, practice along with Bob Marley records. Like just you know, really get into it, get into the feel as much as you can, and play as authentically as you can. Let's see here. Yes, Chris Jerome, yes, minimizing use of sustain pedal definitely helps. I always encourage practicing without the pedal as much as possible. In fact, if you've got a keyboard, just unplug it so you can't just unhook the damn thing. Because you know, the pedal will blur your technique a lot, and kind of cover, you know, you can use it to cover up sloppy technique sometimes, and it just gets to be too, you know. Just you know, too much. So yeah, definitely practice without a pedal, especially when you're doing your scales and arpeggios and things like that. Okay. Yeah, okay. So good question about transcribing by Nasty Naps. Anyway, let's see. Hard time transcribing blues licks, mainly due to double stops in the fast riffs. Is that a way to start? I'm guessing you're meaning, is there a way to start this with a simpler approach? Oscar Peterson riffs seem way beyond me. Okay, so I'm going to answer it, but I'm going to extend it to just transcribing in general, not just blues, you know, blues licks or blues riffs, but anything, you know, like that. Definitely start simpler. I mean, Oscar Peterson is a highly complex pianist, and plays a lot of things very quickly with you know, amazing technique. And so, you know, while he's a great person to listen to and transcribe, if you're in the flow of transcribing and your ears are, you know, fast enough to pick it up, he might not be the best place to start with. You know, I'd recommend pianists that, you know, that maybe play a little bit a little bit less complexly, although you know, saying this, I'm not at all taking away from the great artistry or inventiveness or creativity or anything of any of the other pianists I'm mentioning, but you know, like start maybe with Wynton Kelly. You know, Wynton, you know, swings probably harder than anybody out there ever in history, and my personal opinion, but I share it with a lot a lot of people. And you know, it's pretty much like that left hand comp, right hand solo thing. So it's a little easier to hear. You know, someone like Tommy Flanagan, you know, Hank Jones, Red Garland, you know, something like that. Is maybe just a little easier to hear in terms of, you know, just you know, the lines and things like that. And also, you know, you don't have to transcribe piano players. You can do horn players. A ton of what I did transcribing was, well, I did a ton of horn players too. So I did Miles Davis, Woody Shaw, Freddie Hubbard, Cannonball, Coltrane, a lot of Coltrane. I think I did a couple Kenny Garrett solos. I didn't transcribe any trombone. I'm sorry. There's no reason why. I just didn't. Should have probably. It's never too late. But yeah, a lot of horn players that I transcribed. Let's see. I've never listened to Buddy Montgomery till now. Great. Please check him out. Okay, this is a good question from Sam Chandler. How do you approach learning a tune? What ways can you learn a tune so that you never forget it? So I think this is, I'm just giving you what I did, and that might not apply to how you learn because everyone learns differently. But for me, I gravitate towards the bass. I always listen to the bass notes in anything. Even when I remember when I was a kid, I could sort of sing or memorize classical pieces, Bach, you know, chorales or Beethoven symphonies. I always heard them. I always heard the bass lines first, since I could remember how they went by the bass line. So, you know, like Bach. You know, just a rootment. You know, this is. See, I can't even play the right hand right, but I could, you know. You know, that kind of thing. So for me, learning tunes like a standard, for example, really knowing the root movement helps. And then the next thing would be the melody, I suppose. And for me, how the melody relates to the roots. And then the chords kind of are dictated by that. So a good example was in around 1990, I don't know, mid 90s. I was subbing for Harold Mabern and George Coleman's quartet in New York. Played a week with George at Fat Tuesdays. And George, you know, doesn't write out set lists, you know, and he certainly doesn't send out drop boxes and MP3s and charts. It's like, you just have to know the tunes. And George Coleman and Harold Mabern know a zillion standards. So George would just start playing, and it didn't even matter what key. He would just play in any key, and he would usually go through all 12 keys at some point during the tune. And, you know, thank goodness Jamil Nasser was on bass, because Jamil also, you know, another encyclopedia of standards. So I could figure, if it was a tune I didn't know, I could figure out between the roots that Jamil was playing and the melody that George was playing. I could pretty much figure out what the chords were. Not always sure if it was major 7 or dominant 7, you know, details like that. Not entirely sure, but I could at least get through it and fake my way through it. But that's me. So I usually memorize tunes by the bass notes first, and that's just me. You know, I don't know. That might not work for everybody. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna have to. A whole bunch of questions came in, and they're all so great. Thank you so much. So I'm trying to kind of go back to the beginning, and I hope I can get to everybody. Okay, yeah. Nicole Camlin. I'm sorry, I don't have any particular strategies for guide tone notes. I mean, any of that kind of stuff, I get ideas from listening to arrangements. So if you check out, like Johnny Mandel's string arrangements, or Neil Hefti, big band arrangements by Neil Hefti, or or Thad, or more contemporary stuff like Maria Schneider. I mean, all that's in there. I mean, it's in European concert music from from centuries before that. But I just get all that from listening, and from listening to like really good writing. But I don't have any real theoretical basis for doing that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. Um, Improvising over slash chords. Good question. So a couple different ways you can think about it, maybe. Let's take a slash chord like D over C. So I guess that would be saying that it's really a D tonality, but with a C in the bass. It's the whole idea of slash chords is kind of a post. It's a little bit more modern kind of idea, because I remember one time when I was about 18. When I was 18, I got the very good fortune of being able to play on a record session with Dizzy Gillespie. It was in Paris, and it was actually a pop tune. The record never came out. It was a pop tune. He was kind of doing a favor for a friend of his, a singer friend, and so Dizzy came in, and they had written the story is they'd given him like a little 8-bar section to play over, and it was just like a vamp, and Dizzy was not happy with it. He's like, I didn't fly 5,000 miles all the way to Paris on my own money to play 8 bars in the key of A major. He said that. So he kind of leaned on me to write him something. So I wrote like a little, I just wrote a little progression like that he could blow over. But I think I'd written a slash chord somewhere in there. Maybe I'd written D flat over F or something. But he looked at it. He's like, something over something else isn't a chord. That's not a chord. You got to define what the chord is. So I think he was wanting me to call it an F something. Maybe that would be an F minor with a flat 6, or maybe a sharp 5, or maybe that wouldn't have even been the right way to think of it. But so dealing with that. But going back to that D over C. So I mean, you could play it like a D chord. That's kind of nice, because that gives you some interesting notes. D major 7, or more often than not, really what the person means when they write a slash chord is really it's a C chord of some kind. So really that's like a C major sharp 11, right? But then some composers will be more specific. They'll be like, D triad over C. They really just want that sound, or they'll say no third. So don't play that E in there, just that, But I mean, there's a lot of ways you could think of it. I think it's kind of the context. You have to sort of figure out the context of it. And some people write triple slash chords, like Dave Liebman. He'll write like this is not a specific Liebman chord, but it would be something to the effect of like G major 7 over F major 7 over D flat. And that's a very specific sound. So how to solo over that? Maybe you can try to derive a scale from it. I don't know. There would be a D flat in it. Maybe maybe that. I mean, that scale certainly doesn't have a name that I know of, but those would, I guess, be the notes that you could, legally play over it. Yes, Pickin' Stone. Hey, Keezer. Could you talk about how playing with Blakey, we're on a last name basis here, influenced your playing, like you time feel and rhythmic choices, how rhythm and notes interact? Sure. So playing with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, it influenced my playing definitely rhythmically, especially the way that I think about comping, which people ask me about quite often. So playing with Art Blakey really made me think about how the piano and the drums are like in conversation with each other when they're comping. So I used to listen to Art's left hand a lot, and he would do specific rhythms like 1, 2, 3, 4, dun, 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 between the tom, the tom and the snare drum. So those kind of rhythms you start to pick up on. So in my attempt to sort of lock in with what Art was doing, I would sometimes grab some of those rhythms, like a sort of demonstrating on like a minor blues, but that and that got me listening to other drummers that I was playing with, after Art, and how the snare drums in particular and the comping rhythms tend to interact with each other. There's almost like a conversation. Sometimes you're playing the same thing at the same time. Sometimes it's sort of like playing off of each other, but it's like an active listening thing, that you're always doing. So Art got me really focusing on the groove and on the comping type ideas. Hello from Houston. Hello from Ossining. Denver, Colorado. What's up, Denver? Sorry to miss you. We were supposed to be out there at the end of April playing at Metropolitan University. I was supposed to play 2 piano concert with Don Clement out there, and I was really looking forward to it. Don is one of my favorite pianists, really super creative, brilliant musician, and I'm really sad that didn't work, but we'll reschedule. Let's see. Can I start with Blue Suede Shoes, please? No, sorry. Diminished chords. So they sound so hip and not cheesy. Sure. Diminished chords. So, I do have a lesson in keys to jazz piano on double diminished chords. And they are basically like if you stack on one diminished chord up a whole step, or up a ninth really from the other one. So the upper extensions of any diminished chord are another diminished chord up a whole step. So let's say E diminished. So an F sharp diminished on top of that. So that's a really nice thick E diminished chord. And you can, take some of those notes out. I'm using 2 notes from each one. I'm sorry I don't have the overhead cam going today, but or three notes in each hand. And they also work for minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, same deal. Hear that in like Ravel. And same deal. You can pick. You don't have to use all 4 notes in each hand. You could pick out a couple from each. In this case, you actually get the doubling of that octave, 2 octaves higher. So maybe it's better to leave that off. But yeah, mess around with that a little bit. Let's see. I don't know what "and kids" means. Let's see. I'm just going to jump around. There's so many great questions, and I really apologize for not getting to all of them. Yes, I was absolutely terrified playing with Dizzy Gillespie at age 18. Listen, one thing, another thing, I learned a lot in the 2 times I got to play with him. One thing was about comping. So they threw me up on stage at the Montreux Jazz Festival as a young. I was in Roy Hargrove's band at the time, um, but they threw me up there as like, let's put a bunch of musicians together and like get the young guy on piano, and Dizzy stomped off a blues in G. 1 2 1 2 3 4. So I'm comping, playing, comping things like that, and so when Dizzy gets up to take a solo, I hit what I thought was the correct voicing to play on, like a G7 chord, G13. Like there's that dominant 7, nice and prominent, and the first damn note Dizzy Gillespie plays was a F sharp, the major 7, and he looked at me too. He's like, ba, ba, ba. It's right on my note that I can't hit part of my voice, but something, I don't know what he played, but he just hit that and stayed on that F sharp, and I went, oh crap, now what? I thought I knew how to comp. So kind of taught me about don't be too sure, just kind of stay out of the way, right? Comping is a tricky thing because it's like you have to have confidence to provide the proper amount of support, but not so much confidence that you're bearing the soloist or railroading them into a harmonic direction that they don't want to go in. So be confident, but be willing to change in a split second too. So if you hit this and that ain't working, the soloist says that, just get out of there, get off that F, play something else, play a cluster. I don't know, I don't know what I would do in that moment, but I would definitely get off that F natural. Let's see. Okay, good question, Manu Guerrero, about playing out. What can I say about the left hand when you're playing out? Well, the left hand should definitely, be in the same zone harmonically as your right hand. So if you're, just transcribe McCoy. Transcribe McCoy left hand and right hand. So I'm going to do a very terrible McCoy Tyner impersonation right now, and I apologize. Sorry. But if it's something like, something like that, the left hand definitely is. So if let's say I'm on F7, but I'm going to, my left hand is moving along with it. So I might be implying maybe an E. I might, whatever it is that I'm implying harmonically, and I'm not even totally sure. Maybe I don't know exactly what it is, but it's in the same, literally like if you're just going up a half step, move your left hand too, right? So just move your left hand along with your right, wherever you're going, and then it'll be much more integrated in that way. Giant Steps concepts, Jacob Schofield, check out my Giant Steps lesson in the Keys to Jazz Piano course. I've got some kind of neato concepts for that. Okay, here's a good question. How do you incorporate other pianist style into your playing? So that's how we all learn and develop as musicians, as jazz musicians. I don't have to necessarily actively or consciously incorporate another pianist style into my playing. So when I was learning, I still hopefully am learning, but when I was really, starting out, I did a ton of transcribing, as I said at the beginning of this. Transcribe as much as you can. Best way to learn. Absolutely, hands down. So, you know, one of the complaints or things that a lot of people noticed or maybe mentioned about my playing, especially in my younger, quote unquote, younger days, was that I sounded like, you know, 2 bars of McCoy, 2 bars of Bobby Timmons, 2 bars of Hank Jones, you know, 2 bars of Bud Powell. And I would just jump around stylistically all over the place. And I hadn't really fully, you know, assembled them all into, you know, or it hadn't organized itself in my brain into something coherent yet. But that's what happens, I guess, at least for me, that's what happened is I just did a ton of transcribing and practiced all that stuff. And then when you play, it just comes out naturally. It's like a language. When you are a young child and you're learning to speak, whatever your first language is, whatever part of the world you're from, or language that you grew up speaking. I mean, you grew up speaking the language or languages, if you're lucky, that your parents spoke, right? Or your whoever your primary caregivers were, you know, your grandparents or, you know, family, whoever was around you. Those are the languages that you learn to speak. And then as you get older, you start hanging out with your friends, and then you go to school, and then you start picking up slang, you know, and you know, phrases and things that your friends are saying. And then, you know, for me, you know, when I moved to New York as an 18-year-old, the jazz musicians in New York had a whole specific, you know, kind of slang that was like hip, and it went back to all the way back to, like, you know, the bebop, you know, Charlie Parker and Lester Young and all those guys invented all kinds of words and expressions and things, and people are still using those. And if you hang out with the older jazz musicians, you know, Art Blakey and those guys would use all kinds of, you know, expressions that the young musicians didn't use. And, you know, and so, you know, whatever is around you, your environment influences the way you speak. So, and it all works itself into your vocabulary. And it's the same thing with music. So, I mean, just listen and listen and listen and transcribe, actively listen and actively transcribe, and all that stuff will just get itself into your playing. And eventually you will, just like you do with speaking a language, you will eventually start to discard things that don't resonate with you. You know, you keep the stuff that you do like, and that becomes your sound and your style. Hopefully. Let's see. I did talk about comping quite a bit. Phineas Newborn, yes. Marcus Gaudriot, I think. Yeah, so Phineas Newborn Jr., pianist from Memphis. I found out about Phineas Newborn from James Williams, from the pianist James Williams, who James was my real mentor when I was, you know, a young pianist. And James, when I was about 15, I met him, and he said, "You need to listen to Phineas Newborn," or Finest Newborn, as they called him in Memphis. It blew my mind, you know, to get the record, A World of Piano. He's just he's like kind of like Oscar Peterson, you know, in a way, kind of like Art Tatum in terms of technical ability. What makes Phineas different, I think, is the sort of the orchestration element to his playing. And it's not to say those other pianists don't do that, but, you know, Phineas, for example, if you listen to the way he plays Manteca, the Dizzy Gillespie big band arrangement, like he plays the entire thing. You know, he starts right, and then the trombone parts, right, and then I'm trying to remember who plays what in the arrangement, but you know, he goes he goes. I think that's the saxes that do this part, and then the brass go. So, you know, you hear the dialogue between the saxes and the trumpets, and then in the bridge, you know, he plays like all the parts, right? So there's that kind of idea, just orchestrate, you know, sometimes little things above the melody. So like on the way that he plays Sorry, Lush Life. There's that little bit after it, which is above the melody, and it's softer, and it's almost like a little echo. You know what I mean? There's that kind of stuff, or like the second chorus. Sorry, the second A of Lush Life. So there's always this commentary happening. It's like a dialogue between, the main idea and these little orchestrations. Which, if you wrote out Phineas Newborn's arrangements, you could orchestrate them for orchestra, big band, and all these things. You could say, okay, the woodwinds could do this part, the strings could do this, the blah blah blah. So that's that way of thinking, which was totally unique, because they're not based on any. A lot of it isn't based. Whereas Manteca is based exactly on the big band arrangement. A lot of what Phineas did is just completely original, like just ideas, arranging and orchestrating ideas. Let's see. Lots of great questions here. Let's see. Sorry for the radio, the downtime. I'm just reading through some of these questions, and they're all really good. Just trying to cover ones that I haven't already covered. Okay, so Helen Orzel, how do you go about learning to play solo jazz piano? I've played in a lot of combos, but not tons of solo piano, and that way seems to be a completely different way of playing. Yes and no. I mean, so I tell everybody, and it's really true, that I say Art Blakey taught me how to play solo piano. And Art Blakey, being a drummer, he didn't directly sit down at the piano, although he could play piano. Sometimes he would. Sometimes he'd kick me off the piano bench and he'd play and sing. He'd sing For All We Know. He started out as a pianist, and the story is that he was playing piano on a gig, and some mobster walks in the room with another musician, and like, I don't know if he actually put a gun to Art Blakey's head. That's what he said, but I doubt that happened. But he said, "This guy's going to play piano now, so you get on the drums." And it was Errol Garner was the other, the pianist that the mobster wanted to play. But I say Art Blakey taught me how to play solo piano, because what would happen during an Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers performance, in the middle of the set, Art would send the horn players away, and it would break down to a piano feature. Like, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a piano feature. And the pianist would always play a couple of tunes solo, or like a short little medley of tunes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And then Art and the bassist would come out and join for a trio tune. So I was the last pianist in the band the last year that Art was around. And as the year went on, Art's health kind of got worse, and he would take longer and longer breaks. And so my solo piano portions of the set would get longer and longer, because I'd be playing and I'd look, and there's like, where's Art? He's not back yet. So I'd have to keep going. And one night we were playing Catalinas, the old Catalinas in LA, and Freddie Hubbard came down to hang, and Freddie and Art went back in the dressing room, and they started just hanging and whooping it up like old times. And I think Art forgot there was a gig going on, so I swear he left me out there for 30 minutes by myself. Maybe it wasn't that long, but it sure felt like it. So I played a tune, and I looked, and no Art, played another tune, and I ended up playing most of an entire solo piano set. But it was that experience of just having to do it every night. So like I said at the beginning of this, we're all going to be better solo piano players just by default after this COVID thing is over, because we're just sitting at home, right? But in terms of actual tools, I know that's what you're asking me for, really, is tools, useful tools to become a better solo pianist. Transcribe, Hank Jones. Hank Jones, Hank Jones. The album Tiptoe Tap Dance is a great record to transcribe. There's a couple others that I can't think of the titles of off the top of my head, but anything by Hank Jones solo piano is like a absolute masterclass. If you transcribe that, left and right hand, of course. You know, I mean, there's so much other great stuff out there too, but that's, again, like, I recommend Hank because he is harmonically very, very dense and rich, super hip. Hank's got all the stride stuff, but he never plays. It's not like really, really fast stride. Everything is just, you know, kind of, you know, the medium tempo sort of stuff. So it's very approachable playing, but it is so absolutely full of great information. You know, one measure of Hank Jones will teach you so much, you know. So do that. Let's see. I am just going through here. Yeah. No, that's another good question. Sorry, Ron Newman. Your transcriptions, take them through. Definitely take them through as many. You know, I don't know if you can take a 5-minute long solo through all 12 keys. That seems like that'd be a bit extreme, but, you know, bits and pieces of it, right? Like, you know, find parts of a solo that really appeal to you. Like, oh, this 8-bar section was just so cool. Let me practice that, you know, in both hands, you know, through the keys. Any other ways that you can think to transform it, you know, practice it in block chords, different kinds of block chords, all that, you know, try to just mine as much material out of it as you can. Mental process. A lot of questions about mental process. Greg Hannon, mental process. What is going through your mind when you're crafting a solo in the moment? Hopefully nothing. You know, that's the idea, right? I mean, obviously I'm no kind of Zen master, and I can't say that my mind is completely empty, you know, when I'm soloing or anything like that, but I'm hopefully not thinking too much. I'm really just trying to be, you know, I mean, use a cliche, in the moment. Although there are some considerations, like, you know, if I see, for example, visually, if I see the vocalist walking back up towards the microphone, or the horn players coming back up, that's a pretty clear signal to me that that's the end of my solo. So I better figure out how to wrap it up, you know, it means, because they want to get on with it. They want to take it out, or maybe I've gone on too long. Sometimes I think about a little bit about the arc of the solo that I want to have. And this is just a general sort of thing. You know, again, it's not completely premeditated or scripted, but, you know, if I think, okay, I'm going to have 2 choruses to do something, how can I shape it? Like, I don't want to come blazing out of the gates, like, you know, full steam ahead. I want to kind of maybe develop it a little bit, start a little bit, and maybe get to like a real climax at some point, and then, you know, I don't know if you have to have a whole lot of this at the end of your solo. Maybe not. Maybe it's better to just kind of keep it and leave it up there. So when the next thing comes in, you know, you really get the audience is really like, woo, you know. So you know, some of it's, you know, we think about trying to make really good art, and some people don't really care about the showbiz aspect, but I kind of do. I kind of think it's important to try to be good entertainers too. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be cheesy, but, you know, people are paying money. I mean, when people do, once again, you know, buy tickets to shows, and we can play live shows, and I'm absolutely confident that it will happen, you know, before the year is out. You know, people choose what they're going to spend their money on. Do I want to, you know, go hear this person, or do I want to go hear this person, or we want to go out to a movie or do something else tonight? So I'm always really grateful to the audiences for coming and choosing my show to come to, my gig, you know, over any, you know, 1,000 other things they could spend their hard-earned money on. So I feel like I do have a bit of a responsibility to give them good entertainment. I think you can do both. Like, I think you can make really, really great music and really sophisticated art, but also, you know, meet the audience halfway, right? And some of that is just talking to the audience too. Just be like, you know, because we're playing the same soapbox I always get on, so I apologize if you heard this all before, but like, you know, we're playing a lot of the times, you know, pretty complex and sophisticated instrumental music for people who may, although have an appreciation for what we do, may not understand all of the details of what we're doing, and that's totally fine. But you know, maybe it's nice to sometimes meet the audience halfway and just say, "Hey, this is a song about this or that, this event in my life. I have a personal connection to this song, or this is my impressions of some place I was, or some painting I saw, or whatever." Just so you know, just make some kind of connection with the audience that way. Yes, I do like Glenn Zaleski very much. He's one of my favorite pianists, and I called him in as a sub when I couldn't do a gig recently in New York with a friend of mine. And Glenn was the guy I sent in, and he's absolutely brilliant. Let's see. No, I mean, so same sort of the same question again. People asking about tunes I don't like. Sorry, Tijani Reisiger, Tijani. Not really. You know what? I mean, I can't say that there's any tunes that really make me roll my eyes or not want to play, because I try to just have a good attitude and try to tell myself, even if it's not my favorite tune, there's got to be something I can do on it that's going to be new for me. You know, maybe not new for music in the world, but you know, maybe there's, you know, hopefully I can find something different to do on it, and you know, try to stay inspired. In fact, it's part of the challenge is playing the same tunes over and over and over. If you're with a touring band, you know, for example, like I was in Chris Bodie's band for, you know, mostly, you know, off and on, but mostly on for about 10 years. And, you know, we pretty much did, for the most part, the same set list every night. But, you know, it was the challenge. Part of the challenge of it was finding new things to do every night in the same, you know, playing, okay, we're playing this tune again. What can I do this time to try to challenge myself or push myself to think a little differently about it? And that's something that even the, you know, the repeat audience members that came back, we'd see the same people at the shows. I'm like, hey, you've heard all this stuff before. And they say, yeah, but we hear something different every night. So then I feel like, okay, you know, maybe I was doing my job and, you know, trying to change it up a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, on your Wildcraft album, you played a Rhodes treated with a lot of effect pedals and beautiful chordal swells. Well, was Alan Holdsworth an inspiration? 100%. Thank you, Minnie Ann 56, for mentioning Alan Holdsworth. Absolutely. That's exactly where that sound and that sound design concept comes from. Yes, Sullivan Fortner, Christian Sands, brilliant pianists. Some of my favorites, absolutely. Nat King Cole, yes, directly influenced Oscar Peterson. Oscar would talk about Nat. Rob Barron, what was it? How you doing, Rob? You good? What was it like working in the Ray Brown trio? It was fantastic. Ray Brown, for my money, thank you for that. I've seen some donation. I didn't even know we were doing donations, but that's great. I'm seeing them come in. You're supporting Open Studio. That's fantastic. Thank you. Ray Brown, man. I mean, in a nutshell, in a word, in 20 words or less, greatest straight ahead acoustic jazz bass player one could ever ask for. You know, I mean, he had it all. You know, the beat, the sound, the choice of notes, everything he played was a melody. You could take Ray Brown's bass lines and put them above, you know, in the treble clef, and they'd be great melodies. And you know, in terms of, you know, and I was like trying to be the weird guy. I was coming behind, you know, Monty Alexander and Gene Harris and Benny Green, like the super soulful, bluesy, you know, bebop kind of piano players. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be different from everybody, and I'm going to wear weird clothes, and I'm going to play, you know, I'm going to be the out guy, and I'm going to like try to push the envelope. And Ray was like, whatever, dude, I got you. You know, I'd go out, Ray would go right out with me. In fact, Ray only said really two things about musically, or made two musical comments or constructive criticisms, you know, ever really. And one was the first time we ever played together, which is when we were not the first time we played together. The first time we played together was on that record called "Some of My Best Friends Are the Pianists." That was totally a cold call, and he just rang me up and asked me to come down to the studio, and that was the first time we ever played together. But the first time that we rehearsed, me being officially in his band, we were rehearsing in LA, and he's like, well, let's just play a tune. So he calls Stella by Starlight, and I started, first thing I did was like, trying to do some Herbie stuff. And he just stopped. He's like, all right. Now, all that stuff is cool, but you got to give me some pocket now. Come on. I was like, okay, all right, got you. And the other time was we were playing Tin Tin Dale. Right, with the kind of 12/8. Right, so my solo, I come in, I start playing the Imperial March. Right, and Ray just leans over and he says, "Jazz, please." So, you try to, he's like, you can go as far out as you want, but just come on, man, play the gig, right? So, let's see. I'm just going to do a couple more questions. I'm so, there's so many great ones coming in, and I apologize again for not getting to everybody. Do I document my practice sessions? Scott Joyce, I do sometimes. This is actually, I'm going to plug Open Studio, but they actually make this practice journal, which I found quite useful. If you open it up, it's like scales. Maybe you have this, maybe that's why you're asking the question, but it's like, scales for the week, I guess goals for the week. Literally notes. You can write notes. They got you giving some staff paper. Scales you practice, tunes, keys you practice the tunes, and this is great stuff. So I started to use this because I find it quite useful. If I have tunes, tunes I want to learn. My wife is a singer, Jillian Margot, and so one of the things that we do every night is we have like we do music every night, and sometimes our 2-year-old gets involved. He plays tambourine and stuff and dances around, sings. He's learning tunes. But we try to learn new tunes. We're like, what do you want? Let's learn some new standards. Let's just keep shedding. So we like shed as a unit, as a duo every night here at home. And so yeah, I'm trying to keep practicing and keep learning stuff. Let's see. I'll do a couple more because I love these questions and they're so good. Let's see. Did I say flat teen? Someone's got caps lock jammed down. Yeah, Jerome Feinberg question, how to transcribe solo piano music that wasn't recorded with a metronome. Well, most music isn't recorded with a metronome. I mean, piano, stuff that's in a steady tempo, that's just because the pianist has good time, but in a rubato style, that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever actually tried to transcribe rubato music, but my guess is you could kind of just do your best guess at it. Some of the way that stuff is notated, like in romantic, piano music, where it's just, just a lot of 30-second notes or, streams of notes, but maybe they don't have to fit into an exact, beat or something. But I don't know. It's a good question. I never tried to do that. Maybe I should. Let's see. Oh God, yeah, Hazel Scott. Holy moly. That thing where she's playing the two pianos and one is the keys are reversed, black and white keys are switched. I mean the white keys are black and the black keys are white, and she's doing that thing. It's on YouTube. Just Google Hazel Scott. It's like insanely good playing. You know what? The question about Hal Galber's book Forward Motion, I do not have it. I am familiar with it. I'm not familiar with it enough to comment on it. I'm sure it's good because Hal Galper's a great pianist and a great communicator, of concepts, great teacher in that way. So I'm sure the book is great. If Hal wrote it, it's got to be great. There's a good book by a friend of mine, Luke Gillespie, in Indiana, at Indiana University, called 2-5-1 progressions, or it's about 2-5s. I mean, that's the main idea of the title is 2-5-1s, and that's the whole thing. And it just starts with 3-note voicings, right? And everything's just D minor to G7 to C. And so your job, of course, is to transpose it. You wouldn't be doing it justice if you didn't. But it gets progressively more complex, and as you can imagine, by page 70 or something, he's going through some really complex, like Bill Evans kind of stuff, and a lot of inner movement. I can't play any of it because I don't know it offhand what it would be, but I remember seeing it. It was like really, really cool. And you can transpose those through all 12 keys, and it's give you a lot to work with. A lot of good books out there. I'm not dark on books. I just really, really, really think that you should do your own transcribing first. Use books only as a supplement, to the learning you're doing on your own. The books are great just to give you ideas and help you out with stuff and maybe point you in a direction, but don't just rely on them entirely. You got to listen. Jazz is all about playing by ear. I mean, this is Black American music. It's an oral tradition, right? So it's all about what you hear. If you can't hear it, you can't play it. You cannot read your way through a solo, through a jazz gig. You know what I mean? You gotta play by ear. You gotta learn it by ear. That's the only way. I'm gonna do one more question because I gotta make potatoes tonight. Hi from Budapest. Thank you. Sorry, we're not gonna make it over there. We were supposed to play in Budapest this summer, I think, with David Sanborn. Maybe it got canceled, but I'm just gonna skip down to the bottom. What state? I'm in New York State. We have a great governor here who is really, I feel like, really doing his best with this COVID thing. Okay, this is the last question I'm going to answer for today. Thank you all so much. From A Practice, how do you deal with a guitarist? Do you like a particular setting or combination? That's maybe a keyword question. I'm going to answer it from a pianist perspective. So I learned a lot. I played in duet with Jim Hall, great guitarist Jim Hall, for many years. And quick story about Jim. He hired me the first time we played. He hired me to play a week with him at the Village Vanguard, and we played the first set. We got together at his house and rehearsed a little bit, but it was just kind of a quick run through. So we played the first set, and I'm playing all my piano stuff that I do, and Jim pulls me aside and says, after the set, he goes, "Yeah, Jeff, really dig what you're doing, but maybe we could, thin it out a little bit, leave a little more space." I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool. Sorry, I hope I didn't, step on your notes or whatever." So next set, I tried to back off a little bit, same thing, "Yeah, man." And he said the same thing to me after every set that week, a different way, trying to get through to me, thick skull that I have. And he goes, "Yeah, man, yeah, it sounds great, man, but maybe we can find a little more space, maybe we could play a little more sparsely." God, I mean, he tried to find all these different ways of saying, "Yeah, don't play so many notes," and I thought, God, by Thursday I was playing so sparsely. I thought, God, if I play any less, I'm just going to vaporize. Like, what am I doing up here? But it was teaching me to listen really to what Jim was playing. And what I really realized that he wanted was, he just liked the lines I played. He kind of thought I had a, interesting way of playing linear stuff. And he just wanted really almost like, for the most part, 2-part, like he was playing with another single note instrument. It's kind of what he wanted. And he didn't really care about all the pianistic stuff I was doing. And I did, like, I saved that for my own solos. I did all my stuff that I do. But playing with him, it was just like, just back off and leave some space. If you should check out the way Peter Martin and Romero Lubambo play together. That stuff is up on the web. You can find it. It was like a live gig they did last year. And I think they just did something with the two screens too. But these are two musicians who have played together for years with Diane. So they figured out a way to like leave space for each other and work. But it's the same basic concept as playing with another pianist. So one thing we love to do is play. I love to do is play with other pianists. And you just gotta find a way to like just listen and leave space. Everyone shouldn't comp at the same time, and if you are comping at the same time as a guitarist, don't comp in the exact same range. So don't play on piano if the guitarist is playing the same thing. Just try not to step on each other's toes, and just listen. You have to really, really listen. You're like actively listening and playing at the same time, which is really the same thing about comping for any instrument. You're just trying to have a bit of a conversation and a dialogue and not get in the way. And it takes some practice. It's easy to talk about. It's harder to do, right? But you just gotta, it's just give and take kind of thing. I am gonna go, but thank you all for being here today. And I do, my website, you can write to me out on my website, geoffreykeezer.com. You can write to me on Open Studio's Facebook page if you're on that. Just send me a message. I mean, I'll get to it eventually. It's hard keeping up with all these different points of contact because there's so many different people messaging me all over on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and blah blah blah. And it's a little tricky to get around to everything, but I will do my best. I really appreciate you all being here. Please continue to support musicians. I mean, a lot of you are probably all musicians, so support each other. Stay inside, stay safe, keep shedding, keep listening, keep transcribing. I'll see you soon.